Man, I've been feeling really off this week, and I'm finding it harder and harder to do videos I was planning to do, so here's a video I wasn't planning to do. So last Friday, I saw Kung Fu Panda 4 randomly. I enjoyed it. I wasn't planning on reviewing it. But now that it's been a couple of days, the weekend's over, and everyone else has seen it, turns out the movie was pretty controversial. And, it's out. I did a review of Ruby Gillman a few weeks ago that did okay too, so you know what? Fuck it, I'll review it. Let's talk about the panda. All right, so I'll start off by just quickly going over the previous 3 Kung Fu Panda movies because this has a couple of callbacks to at least the first one and the third one, not so much the second one. But yeah, anyway, I'm a huge Jack Black fan. By and large, the big man, I think he can do no wrong. He's a living legend. He's the founder of Tenacious D. He's got a great singing voice. Jack Black is just always a good time. And the first Kung Fu Panda movie put that good time to animation and gave us the story of Po the Panda, a lazy slacker panda with a mysterious origin story who was randomly selected to be a dragon warrior instead of the Fearless Five, the best 5 warriors in the land, representative of the 5 classic Kung Fu styles. The Fearless Five were voiced by Hollywood heavyweights such as Lucy Liu, Jackie Chan, and everyone's drug dealer Seth Rogen. And I bring this up because it's going to matter later. Anyway, he goes on to defeat the villainous Tai Lung and prove himself a hero, and that's the first Kung Fu Panda movie. The first movie is okay. If I had to say what the big deal about Kung Fu Panda 1 is, I would semi-argue that the legacy of the first movie is bigger and more important than the movie itself. Because Jackie Chan so heavily promoted the movie in China, where it made a huge impact there, it hit right around the time when Hollywood suddenly realized that you could exploit Chinese audiences for profit. And so yeah, the movie did very well in China, and at that point, it did so well in China that Chinese filmmakers actually noticed that, oh hey, this is an animated movie making billions of dollars. Kung Fu Panda literally made Chinese filmmakers realize that animation was a viable film medium in a way that they had never really thought about or focused on before. And if it wasn't for Kung Fu Panda, you wouldn't get Abominable, a bunch of other Chinese knockoff films, either directly inspired by or maliciously trying to copy and paste the panda for quick profit. And that's kind of the case with Kung Fu Panda 4. Anyway, let's keep going on our recap. Eventually, because the movie made so much money, we get Kung Fu Panda 2. And I have to say that Kung Fu Panda 2 is a masterpiece. It is the absolute peak of the Kung Fu Panda series. It's got groundbreaking visuals, these huge complicated cities, this insane murderous peacock villain, who is definitely the best villainous peacock in cinematic history. The fact that it ends with this peacock being this bloodthirsty edgelord, just pure cinematic wonder. That bitch-ass peacock, Lord Shen, he spends his last seconds trying to stab Kung Fu Panda to death, and it is a horrible end, and I love it. I'll also throw out a hot take here that Kung Fu Panda 2 is the only piece of Kung Fu Panda media in the franchise where the crew put in 100% of the work and got 100% a pure good movie out of it. I would definitely say that for the other Kung Fu Panda movies, maybe they didn't do all the work, maybe they cut some corners here and there, but for Kung Fu Panda 2, they definitely did the work. Maybe they did the work in 3 too, but 3 unfortunately didn't come out as good. Now, I will say that even if they did 100% of the work in Kung Fu Panda 3, the movie just still came out bad. Kung Fu Panda 3 just felt like a bad dream of too many pandas, explaining Po's crazy backstory that he was like a long lost panda from like another panda city. It puts in some family panda drama, and it has a completely forgettable villain who I'm like having to remind myself now was some sort of evil cow or something. Now, despite Kung Fu Panda 3 kind of sucking, it at least fully completed Po's arc by finally making him a Kung Fu master and putting to bed a lot of his personal issues from his like weird mistaken identity issue. Anyway, so yeah, Kung Fu Panda 3 essentially wrapped up the franchise. There was really no need to make a Kung Fu Panda 4. I, for one, never thought there would be a Kung Fu Panda 4, but damn it, I guess DreamWorks needs that money to pay for their water park, and Ruby Gillman sure as hell didn't bring it in. So that brings us to unexpectedly Kung Fu Panda 4, and I gotta say, it's a bizarre movie. So back to me. I saw it Friday, and while I have to say that it's a lot better than Kung Fu Panda 3, even though it spends a lot of its plot trying to justify itself against Kung Fu Panda 3, It is very shamefully no Kung Fu Panda 2, not at all. No movie could ever be, no movie will ever spend that money. And I find it very interesting that it's positioned itself in such a way that I have to say that Kung Fu Panda 4 is not better than Jurassic Park 1. Oh wait, did I say that out loud? Okay, that was totally a Freudian slip, but yeah, you know what? That's a true statement. Kung Fu Panda 4 is not as good as Jurassic Park 1. Let me unpack that because that kind of just came out of my subconscious. Kung Fu Panda 4 is basically Jurassic Park 3. Now, if you're not familiar with the Jurassic Park franchise, Jurassic Park 1 is the story of a group of scientist experts brought to a tropical island full of dinosaurs, and the dinosaurs escape. And so the hero scientist, Dr. Alan Grant, has to step up and save 2 children from the dinosaurs with his very superior knowledge of dinosaurs. And then Jurassic Park 2 happens. Jurassic Park 2 is the story of Ian Malcolm, a character who was already dead at this point in the original novel. He is played by fan favorite 80s heartthrob Jeff Goldblum, and he again also has to save a random child from dinosaurs. However, upping the stakes is there are now 2 T-Rexes, and one of them gets away and attacks San Diego. Anyway, now let's talk about Jurassic Park 3. So Jurassic Park 3 is majorly weird. Despite Jurassic Park 1 and 2 making an obscene amount of money for the time, in Jurassic Park 3, the filmmakers decided, you're going to come no matter what. They started to cut a lot of corners. So in Jurassic Park 3, the only returning character is Alan Grant, and despite the fact that Jurassic Park 3 was supposed to be a new movie, it's actually entirely consisting of cut material from the first Jurassic Park novel that was adapted into the first Jurassic Park movie. In short, Jurassic Park 3 is basically a bunch of cut shit that they couldn't fit into the first movie, strung together with a bare bones premise that Alan Grant is forced back into action again to rescue yet another random child from a bunch of dinosaurs. And yeah, back to Kung Fu Panda 4, it's kind of the same deal. Even though this is the 4th movie in the franchise, this movie is very obsessed with trying to be a direct sequel to the first Kung Fu Panda movie. And in doing so, it cuts a lot of corners. For example, the Fearless 5, fan favorites of the film franchise, are relegated to off-screen no dialogue cameos because their voice actors were too effing expensive. Now, you still get Poe's Master, you still get Tai Lung, who comes back from the dead from the first movie, and you also get Poe's 2 dads from Kung Fu Panda 3 going on this weird homoerotic journey together. It's got a few decent jokes, but overall this movie is almost like a filler episode in terms of the Kung Fu Panda legacy. Anyway, alright, let's talk about the biggest problem with the film. The biggest problem in the film that most people have seem to be the mostly new characters who have been added to replace the Fearless 5 and, fill in the need for other characters. And one of the funniest controversies of this film is actually that Mr. Beast was cast as a new character called Panda Pig. And this character, he appears for a total of a goddamn 3 seconds. It was so freaking stupid. Like, this character is only here so they could do a whole separate line of Mr. Beast is in this movie on this whole separate advertising campaign directly directed to the Mr. Beast fans who are all fucking 12-year-olds. But the reaction to this, the backlash to this has been fantastic. It is definitely a sociological experiment to say the least. The Mr. Beast thing is completely stunt casting. And yeah, it's a very, very curious publicity stunt. At best, Mr. Beast ended up being a red herring in this film's history. But the real biggest question mark that I have to point out is that Awkwafina is in this movie. And it's an interesting casting choice. And when I'm talking about Awkwafina, I am, of course, am not referring to the water company. I am unfortunately referring to Nora Lum, the favorite Chinese girl from Queens who became a global sensation overnight, stole everyone's hearts in the movie Crazy Rich Asians in 2018, and became one of the most powerhouse actresses in Hollywood. And also, how the hell does she get born with the name Nora Lum and not just rock that? We should just call her Lum. The girl threw away the most heavy metal name in history to be a fucking bottle of water on a Google search. But all right, so without going too far off topic, I have some very complicated feelings about Nora lately. Overall, I gotta say, Nora is the most talented Chinese American female actress in our current lifetime. In the current moment, she's that, and I have to give her that. She's funny, she's talented, she's hot if she wants to be, she's not hot if she doesn't want to be. Awkwafina is a great actress. I can relate to her as a fellow New Yorker. She's awesome. However, I would say lately she might be working too much, or at the very least, she started doing so much work that she's doing projects that don't really elevate her or benefit her. And I feel like she's kind of getting thrown into a lot of projects where lately she's just the token Asian person. And I'm starting to feel very annoyed about this. And I think I would even be less annoyed if it wasn't always her. Like Ali Wong and Atsuko Akatsuka are slowly gaining enough clout to try and snag a piece of her Asian lead comedy actress pie. But without naming names, I'll say that half of the movies she's been in the past decade greatly underutilize her. And a lot of these movies that underutilize her and tokenize her have been produced by Disney. But yeah, anyway, so she's here in this movie and she's pretty much the co-star here. She's the lead heroine. She's in 90% of the movie. She has the second most biggest screen time, only to Kung Fu Panda himself, Jack Black. So I literally spent a majority of this film sitting in my chair, twisting around, trying to decide with laser focused precision if this movie was good or bad or not, and judging it entirely based on her performance. Now, she comes in as this like new Fox Ninja Thief character. The character itself is fine, but as I thought about it at the end, the writing of the Fox character is pretty bombastic to say the least. Like, Awkwafina's Fox character is a pretty multifaceted character with a lot of negative traits, and it goes through like a bunch of stages of growth. Like the Fox starts out as a bad guy. You're like, oh, punch that bad guy, Kung Fu Panda. But then she changes sides and becomes a smug and annoying sidekick. And then you're like, she's so annoying. Why is he putting up with her? Then she doubles down on being the bad guy. And he's like, why did you ever trust her, Kung Fu Panda? And then at the end, she has like a complicated change of heart. And it's like, oh, she's not so bad after all because she's Awkwafina. And then the last second, like, she gets everything. There's a massive role change. She becomes a Mary Sue hero. She defeats the real villain, and she becomes Kung Fu Panda's apprentice. So I'm just going to be real. Now, Awkwafina doesn't ruin this movie because I still like Awkwafina. And even though this ends up being pretty much Kung Fu Panda and Awkwafina's comedy buddy adventure, I don't think that this is the worst Awkwafina movie. Like, Awkwafina kind of becomes Kung Fu Panda's replacement, kind of his apprentice. They seem that they're trying to end the saga of Kung Fu Panda, so now there's like a baton pass, and I guess now it's going to be like Kung Fu Awkwafina. But it's not like as egregious as like Rey Skywalker, like single-handedly burying all three leads of Star Wars, taking all their names, taking all their worldly possessions, taking all their respective shit. It doesn't feel completely out of character that now Kung Fu Panda is going to play second fiddle to Awkwafina as a sassy Fox character. It just is kind of out of nowhere. So yeah, I expect for a lot of people, the questionable Awkwafina character is probably going to be the most divisive part of this movie. But actually, as it turned out, I was wrong. More on that in a little bit. So otherwise, the main villain of this film is Chameleon. So I like Chameleon a lot. I think she has a cool shape-changing gimmick. I think that she basically has like the soul-stealing gimmick from Mortal Kombat. I don't mind that she makes a bunch of callbacks to the other Kung Fu Panda movies. I actually thought that was kind of cool fan service. And even though the Chameleon has basically zero backstory, she's just like an evil warlord there to tick various check marks and be like a stereotypical evil villain wizard person. But yeah, I guess she kind of makes Awkwafina look better by comparison. But I also thought that when she turns into like the lizard version of Kung Fu Panda, that was really awesome. And I wish they had kind of explained that better, because they go specifically out of the way to say that she needs to steal Kung Fu to do Kung Fu, but then she can just do pose Kung Fu without doing that. So I'm not sure what the deal was with that. That kind of seems like a plot hole. But yeah, overall, I thought the Chameleon was very cool. I thought she looked cool. I thought she had cool powers. I thought her bizarre plan to steal souls was pretty unique for a kids movie, because it was technically the plot of the first Mortal Kombat game. I will say, though, that one of the biggest controversies about this movie is that the three bad guys from the previous three movies come back, and really only Tai Lung has like a story that like updates his story and fills in what has happened to him since he's been dead. Now, this is actually pretty crazy. What happens is like the Chameleon brings back his immortal soul, and I guess he was in heaven Like she took him out of heaven. Like, I'm sorry, this movie is fucking vague, but they either are implying here that all the Kung Fu Panda villains who were like murderers and warlords died and went to heaven and they loved it there, or alternatively, they're implying that the chameleon sucking out their souls was more painful than hell. Either interpretation you go with, that's pretty wild. But yeah, so anyway, Tai Lung comes back, and his story is now that he's helping Po, or at least he's happy that Po got his soul back and sent him back to hell or heaven. Either way, he's happy about it. And I guess along the way, he learned to respect Po as a true warrior. Oh, and by the way, so do Shen and Kai from the third movie, even though they have no interaction with Po, but they still have the same story arc, and okay. So yeah, let's boil this down. The movie, I thought it was okay. I liked it. Awkwafina's stunt casting is a bit of a hard meatball to swallow. Mr. Beast's stunt casting is totally just a troll move to troll people online, so that made me laugh. So anyway, what's the big problem with the movie? Well, judging by the average reaction people are having it to Twitter, it's a couple of things. Now, to start with, DreamWorks earned themselves some massive bad karma a few weeks ago by releasing a straight-to-streaming, horrible sequel to beloved cult classic Megamind starring Will Ferrell. But the sequel doesn't have Will Ferrell. And seemingly even worse, they also released a streaming series that was just as bad. I heard it was so bad that I didn't even check it out, plus I don't have Peacock. But anyway, now here we are a few weeks later and Kung Fu Panda 4 drops. And like I said, even though I personally felt like this movie was better than Kung Fu 3, I think it has a stronger story than Kung Fu 3. The movie has some very obvious and very noticeable corners cut. And I think the biggest problem is the complete absence of the Fearless Five, aside from their like non-speaking post-movie credit cameos, and the fact that Shen and Kai are in this movie with like zero development. Shen is barely visible except for a couple of scenes, and Kai doesn't do shit. Kai is like straight up a background actor in this. But I guess the problem is that while kids and people new to the franchise really aren't going to give a shit about this, for long-term fans of Kung Fu Panda who have stuck with the series from the beginning, like literally anyone above the age of 12, it's so obvious that this movie cuts some major corners, and that these cameos and cop-outs are like all throughout the movie in such a transparent way that it's insulting. It's like the time when The Simpsons suddenly retconned Principal Skinner's entire backstory to do like a joke episode about how he was like an identity thief, and then like after the fact they tried to status quo that shit back to normal. But no, people remember that, and you permanently change that character's history forever for like a dumb joke. And that's kind of what this movie does. Or maybe that's what Kung Fu Panda 3 did, because it like retconned his like adopted panda origin story. Either way, this movie is still like living in that like horror. So anyway, the point is like it was handled in a shitty way, and the audience was too smart to see through it. And that's what's going on here in Kung Fu Panda 4. What I'm saying here is that the average audience is probably too smart to fall for all these obvious cost cuts that are just so plain to see on the page in Kung Fu Panda 4. Like, it's weird. Now that the movie's out, like a lot of the behind the scenes drama is starting to leak out about exactly what went down and why these corners were cut, why it turned out this way. But I don't care about that. I don't even need to see any of that. It's just obvious that what went down for one reason or another is they didn't have enough money to do this movie properly, or they weren't patient enough to get the money to do this movie properly. This is like, again, like it feels like they just rushed this movie out, cut as many corners as they could. They couldn't get the Fearsome Five back because Lucy Liu and Jackie Chan alone would probably want like hundreds of millions of dollars. So yeah, they just cut every single corner they could, and it's too obvious. It's so obvious that a fool or a child can see where they cut them. So I guess now that it's all said and done, what did you guys think of Kung Fu Panda 4? Did you like it? Did you notice where they cut corners? And do you think the cutting of the corners is a scandal? Obviously, I know that people were very unhappy with these half-assed and underdeveloped cameos. But then I guess that begs the question, would the movie have been better off without them? It seems that at least taken into account of the long-term story of the series, I think they definitely probably should have skipped Shen and Kai, because they're just in the movie so little that they barely matter. Like the Chameleon doesn't even utilize their powers. She mostly just uses Poe's powers and Tai Lung's powers. So then the Fearsome Five, that's a whole nother story. Like Would you have been okay if it was just like the Fearsome 3? Would have been better if just like Seth Rogen's Mantis or just the Jackie Chan Monkey Kid showed up and they just benched the rest of them? I feel like there was really no pleasing anyone with this movie because in the end, they just didn't have enough money to do it right. So maybe they shouldn't have done it. All the same though, I still thought it was okay, but let me know what you think. Leave a comment, check me later. Good night.